The women have taken over the Baker mansion. Billy is really feeling his role as principal, and Spencer is still struggling to find balance in college and sports. What's good, y'all? It's your good sis Erica Vane coming to you right here on Erica Vane TV with another All-American video. In this video, we're doing a breakdown for episode 11 from season 4, and I have a lot to say. If you missed my live last night, I go live every Monday night after both the All-American and All-American Homecoming episodes to chop it up with y'all and really debrief on how we feel about the episodes that we saw, as well as give our initial thoughts. And if you were on there last night, you know that I had a whole rant and a half that I'm going to shorten for this particular video. I'm going to try to keep it to what we actually saw, a little bit of my feelings. But this episode was interesting. What I will say is that the episode was good. However, I was definitely disappointed by the end. And if you continue and watch this video all the way to the end, then you'll know exactly why I was a bit disappointed. But before we get into all that, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and turn on your bell notification so that you don't miss out on any of my All-American videos when they are posted. And you're notified when I go live right here on the channel. I'm breaking down All-American, All-American Homecoming, Sisters, Bel Air, Power Book 4 Force, Grownish, and so many more of the top television series that are on any network as of right now. So you really don't want to miss out on any of the content coming to Erica Vane TV. I promise you are going to love it here. Y'all, at the top of the episode, Spencer is at the beach house catching breakfast. Billy goes over to the beach house because he is just surrounded by all the women at the Baker's mansion because everybody named Mama is living there at this point. And then we get to see Spencer running to the wrong class to be specific. So this is really just to give us the visual that Spencer is struggling with football, but then also still struggling to get acclimated with school. And honestly, this is 100% normal. Like, you're on a new campus, everything is new. In high school, everything is much smaller. The campus that you're on, you can really navigate and figure out really quickly. So it's to be expected that he is going to struggle in finding his classes and finding his footing, especially because he has all the stress of what's happening in the football team weighing on him as well. The biggest thing for me though is, why is he staying at this beach house? I really don't understand it. To me, it's very unrealistic. He is a freshman football scholarship having student athlete. You need to be in the dorms. You cannot learn the campus if you're not actually on campus. The fact that they have him staying at this beach house is a problem because to me it's 100% unrealistic. And then you wonder why you're late, Spencer. You're not even living on campus as a freshman. Where did they do that at? But before we get into Mr. Spencer James and all that he had going on in this episode, I want to round about and go through everyone else. So Billy provided a pretty good storyline in this episode. He bring Preach in to the school to tutor some of the football players and really help calm down a lot of the ruckus that's being caused. And Preach fits in like a glove. Like, this position actually fits him. He's able to get these young men in check really, really quickly. They respect him. And then also he's able to speak to them in a way that gets them engaged in the academics, but also relates it back to things that they know. I love the segment where we were able to see him relating Shakespeare to rap and having him go for lines. We got to see Jabari for a quick second in this episode. And I was like, okay, all right, Principal Baker, you doing it. But the one thing I will say when it comes to Billy Baker in this principal storyline is that I don't like where we're going with it. So in this episode, we got to see Grace and Billy kind of at odds with the idea of him staying principal. He actually lets it be known that he would love to be the permanent principal. However, Grace lets him know that somebody has already been identified. And while she doesn't say that it's her, I 100% believe that it's her. And it kind of started to feel like Grace is going to be painted to be the villain because Billy is going to stand and fight for this position with the school. And when I say that it feels like they're about to villainize Grace, it's because some of her dialogue I wasn't necessarily feeling. Like, even when she was discussing Preach and like how Preach can't be in a campus because he has a felony, I'm like, Preach has been around your son this entire time. Preach has been around Coop this entire time. Like, you know, Preach is a really stellar person. So while I can understand the rules say that because you have a felony you can't be on school grounds, but clearly, you know, the principal can override that, you know, Preach as a person. So it kind of felt like we're about to take this journey with Grace where she's going to kind of come across a little bit high and mighty, and I hate that for her because we love Grace as a character. And she does, honestly, aside from the fact of like it's Billy that she's going to have to oust for this position, she fits it. Like, I wonder why she didn't think of herself to begin with when they were looking for the interim principal. Like, Grace would be an amazing follow-up to Carter, and then of course she's dating Carter, so Carter would be in her back pocket to help her, you know, get through all of that anyway. But I can't speak too much on that in this video because a lot of what I'm drawing from in reference to what I feel like they're going to villainize her for is in the preview for next week's episode and episodes to come, but they definitely laid the groundwork for it in this episode. Speaking of the groundwork for this fight for principal or the principal position at South Crenshaw, Billy actually, you know, lets Laura know this, and when I tweeted this out, y'all, and I still mean it, Billy don't deserve Laura Baker at all. Laura Baker is such a real one, it's ridiculous. But you know what? I'm glad that you have her, sir. I'm glad that you have her to lift you up. Billy lets Laura know that he wants to stay principal and lets her know some of the things that Grace said was pluses for the person who's going to be taking over the position, and one of those things being that the person lives in Crenshaw. So Laura's like, all right, well, I guess we move into Crenshaw because you want to take this position and, you know, you want to be competitive. Just like that easy. She about to move out of this mansion and go to, you know, GW's place, and they about to shack up there and create this lovely campaign for Billy to stay principal at South Crenshaw. I do want to note that Grace made some really valid points in that Billy does have sometimes a selfish streak, but then also he is going to want to be a pro or college football coach at some point. So he's also not committing to Crenshaw for like literally the foreseeable future. I think that because he doesn't have any offers right now in those arenas, that's why he's getting excited about this, but ultimately he is going to want to move on. Now also in this episode, Patience is approached by the detective from the case for Mo's murder, and after asking Laura to look into it further, by the end of the episode, Patience and we learn that this is about to be a serious investigation and that Coop needs to come back because they need to figure out what they're going to do. This, y'all, they didn't actually give a ton of information, but somebody is going to take the fall for Mo's murder. Right now it's on Coop because she threw herself into it, saying that she's the one who shot her. I wonder if this detective has any evidence to prove that Coop wouldn't have been able to shoot her or anything like that, because she wasn't actually left at the scene. They didn't find her at the scene, right? She was taken to the hospital, so they wouldn't have been able to tell the trajectory of the bullet or what position she was at or any of those things. But something is going to come up where I think that she's going to be pressured to have to give up Preach's name or take it all on her own. And we talked about this on live, even though I don't think that this is going to happen, but we talked about on live the potential of Coop going to prison, and all we can do is stay tuned to find out if that happens. Another storyline that I thoroughly enjoyed of last night's episode was the Layla storyline with her and Sabine finally getting in the studio together. She pops up on her like, yeah, let's go ahead and work. And Layla is trying to be somebody that she's not, trying to be who she thinks the artist wants. And I love that Sabine is so very candid and open and honest with her in that she wanted the Layla Keating sound. She wanted that raw, visceral emotions. They spend the day working on music, but then also Sabine starts to dig deeper and ask her more questions, ultimately arriving at the conversation around Layla deciding that she was going to go the indie route just because she didn't want to stay in her father's shadows and didn't want a bunch of drama that was tied to all of that, but she's 100% capable of being a big major player. And Sabine's like, yes, our collaboration is going to be your first step into going bigger, doing more. And I loved it. I love how Layla was able to call to some of her past experiences and some mindsets that she has set up from previous learned behaviors or learned or endured circumstances that she now has to reject. And I think that this is a strong through line that they keep going with her character that's super, super solid. Asher is over at Coastal California trying to become a student coach with Coach Mr. Montez. Shout out to JJ. JJ Parker is just amazing. I love his character for this series, and he always adds a little extra zhuzh, a little extra sauce. Him running around calling Coach Montez Coach Mr. Montez or Coach Other Montez Coach Mrs. Montez. It's like, sir, what? Asher's like, you know you can call them both Coach Montez, right? Yeah, Anywho, love JJ. Asher starts this out very, very humble, it seems, in wanting to get a student coach position, and Coach Montez gives him the task of reviewing some old footage and telling him what he sees. He comes back with a very valuable piece of information that somebody didn't notice, but he didn't actually wind up seeing initially what Coach Montez wanted him to see. And it's honestly the kids in this audacity that they seem to have went to Walmart and bought on rollback in major quantities that I just don't understand. Like the amount of audacity capacity that Asher has in this episode, that Spencer has in this episode, that we've seen Jordan have throughout the series as they are talking to some of these adults, specifically their coaches. I just cannot. When Asher is frustrated because he can't figure out what it is that Coach Montez wants him to see, he literally comes up to the field and throws this little tantrum and is like, if you just didn't want me to be a coach, you should have just said that. And it's like, who are you talking to, little boy? Who exactly are you talking to? Coach Montez keeps it graceful and kind the entire time, which I absolutely adore. And he's going to wind up being another great mentor for Asher Adams moving forward. And that's one thing that Asher do have. He might have some down luck, but he also has really great luck, and the universe be rallying around him to make sure he's in good hands. Now to the major conflict points of the episode, and the part that I struggle with. Typically, well, honestly, y'all, I struggle with the very end. The first 30 to 40 minutes of the show, I think I was good. Maybe the first 30 minutes. I was good. Watching both Spencer and Olivia have to deal with things within their lives, within their journeys, within, you know, within their wheelhouse of like the things that they have prioritized for themselves, right? Spencer is a collegiate football player. Olivia is a recovering addict, journalist, and sponsor. And this, I think, is one of the first episodes that we're starting to see them really function solo. So one person is doing one thing within their life and their journey, and the other person is doing other thing within their life and their journey. And while Spencer is rude, he hangs up on Olivia and kind of like shuts her down when she calls because she says that she needs help because Jen goes missing, who is her sponsee. I don't think that he was actually wrong for prioritizing himself. I struggled with, at the end of the episode, how things kind of shook out, because I feel like with last episode, they really set us up for Olivia to seem more understanding than she behaved in this episode. She is very much so worried and scared as she communicates in this episode about Jen. Jen's parents call her because they cannot find Jen, and Olivia immediately calls Spencer, who is in the middle of some things on his own. He's very frustrated. He communicates that frustration and takes that out on her a little bit on the phone and ultimately hangs up. I was completely shooketh when this happens in the episode. I'm like, oh, I'm paying attention now, because we don't actually get to see this happen. We don't really get to see any tension when it comes to Spencer and Olivia. It really has been painted like everything is all hunky-dory and good to go and a complete dream sequence / fairy tale, and they have no problems. So when I'm watching, I'm like, okay, this could be very true. He's gonna have to come back and apologize for being rude, but at the end of the day, he did need to focus on what he had going on. And for me, one of the big things I struggle with Olivia specifically in this episode is that I didn't want her to be a sponsor to begin with. I think that it was a horrible decision and horrible ask for her to walk into the journey of being somebody else's sponsor so quickly after she was just getting back on her recovery journey, her sobriety journey, and knowing that she was going to take this huge transition in life of going to college on top of 6 months ago having experienced what she experienced with her relapse, and then getting into this new relationship and trying to do this relationship in a healthy, happy way while also, you know, maintaining and prioritizing her sobriety journey. Like, they already have made a very clear note in the series that getting into a relationship and having any type of romantic partnership while you're pursuing sobriety after a huge traumatic turn within that journey is not something that they actually advise. So you're already doing something that's going to put stress on that particular part of your life. I 100% was not for her becoming a sponsor, and this episode is why. Olivia drops everything that she's doing. We don't actually see her return back to campus, so she completely missed any classes that she had for the day because she needed to go and find Jen, who was hanging out at the Slauson Cafe because she was struggling with feelings of potentially being triggered by entering into the same environment that she had while she was actually using drugs. It's 100% understandable. And another thing I think I'm also starting to get annoyed with is I think that they're going to try to tell us Olivia's story by way of telling us Jen's story. Because when Jen is talking about, I didn't show up today because these are all the same people I did drugs with. This is the same environment. Like, I didn't feel comfortable. Like, I was very nervous and triggered. That is something that literally happened to Olivia. And we saw that. It's something that I definitely called out. If you haven't already, I did a whole Olivia sobriety journey video and broke down everything up through season 3. of what was happening from the beginning of the series, what was happening with Olivia's sobriety journey. So go ahead and check that out. It's a premium video on the channel, quite in depth. But in this conversation, Olivia's like, yeah, I completely understand. And I'm like, they never outright, they never came out and actually said that or explicitly pointed to it with Olivia's story. So that's the thing that's starting to make me think that we're going to start to see things happen with Jen, and Olivia's just going to be able to relate or call back to it, but we never actually see it happen. And that's what I mean by when I say I think that they're going to try to tell some of Olivia's story by way of Jen, and that's going to be a way that they protect her from relapsing again, or, you know, going down a certain road, but also being very organic and honest about the journey of addiction, right? So I struggle with that because I kind of want to see the character journey from the actual character. But then again, Olivia spending all this time to go and find this girl, and then she struggles with the fact that Spencer isn't available to go by her side to do it, but Jordan is. One, Jordan is a walk-on. Nobody's paying attention to him in any kind of real capacity. Spencer is a paid athlete to be on the school. His scholarship is covered. They are financially invested in the fact that he is actually at the school. Yes, of course, Jordan's on the team, so it does matter, but he has a lot more leeway because nobody's expecting anything of him. In this episode, not only is Spencer already struggling with the football team, but he learns that the head coach did not actually want him. He wanted to give that scholarship to Elijah, and the only reason why Spencer got it was because Coach Boone made it a condition of his contract that if he came to work for Coastal California, that he would also be able to recruit and give Spencer a scholarship. That is a major thing. So Spencer being hit like a ton of bricks with that information, I completely understood. And to see that Olivia doesn't actually know what's going on, so let's go ahead and give her that. She doesn't actually know what's going on, but she also doesn't take the time to think about the potential scenarios that could be happening. She feels like Spencer just completely ignored her or dismissed what she had going on, and this is where the whole thing gets a little bit interesting for me, and not in necessarily a good way. This is going to happen. I 100% understand. Personally, I wish that it was something actually going on with Olivia so that she would have further ground to stand on in reference to being pissed about Spencer not having time to talk to her about Jen, because Jen is Jen. You decided to be a sponsor. You chose this for yourself. I didn't choose to be this girl's sponsor. I have other things going on. Why in the world would you expect for this boy to drop everything, knowing what you know about his current struggle and journey and season, to go and find this girl who you also just figured out was at the Slauson Cafe? So y'all been sitting here eating biscotti and kikiing. Like, Olivia, it makes absolutely no sense. You want Spencer to cut off everything that he's doing, no matter if he's in practice, reviewing film, meeting with a coach. Like, drop everything to go find Jen? Girl, what? Why in your brain did that actually make any kind of sense? And it would have been fine, y'all, if all of this happened and then she came back like, dang, I think I overstepped. I had way too many expectations on you. I had no idea what was going on in your day, and I'm sorry. This is my responsibility as a sponsor. I need to go ahead and take care of this, and I got to realize I'm not going to have somebody to go with me or to do X, Y, and Z at any given point in time. I'm sorry. But no. By the end of the episode, we get Spencer creating this romantic dinner and deeply, deeply apologizing for his part in it. And then Olivia apologizing because Spencer apologizes, and then saying that she didn't realize that she was going to be a part of the thing, or she hadn't prepared herself for being part of the things being sacrificed in his life. What? Just last episode, you were talking about y'all needed to take a step back because you think that the expectation of time or whatever y'all have going on within your relationship could be creating a problem. Spencer does tell you no, that's not the case. He has to just figure it out. But like, to me, it's just so inconsistent because you literally was just saying this last episode, and now all of a sudden you want him to drop everything for Jen. Not even for you, for Jen. And why didn't we call Nurse Joy? Shout out to the subbies who was in the live last night, because someone said, why didn't she call Nurse Joy? That would have been a perfect person to call. This is your first like kind of crisis with your sponsee. Why don't you call your sponsor? Someone who actually knows this whole thing. I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. And I think I really just struggle with the idea that we have seen Spencer have to kind of like chase Olivia since season 3. And I was definitely looking forward to if they made up by the end of the episode, because they were really had tension all throughout the episode. I wanted it to be her that led with the apology, because it seems like it's always Spencer creating conditions for her to feel comfortable and just being very overly extensive, when at the end of the day she does have more accountability in it as well. If y'all missed my live, I did an entire rant about this particular situation, and I'm a lot calmer now, but I really struggled with how we actually ended the episode. Not even because of the dinner, but the cherry on top for the what the hell is actually going on, y'all, was the fact that Spencer gets to a place, JJ helps him meditate, calm down, refocus, readjust, and he comes up with a new game plan for how he's going to tackle football and his struggles within football. And he goes and he tells Coach Boone, yeah, I got a whole new mindset. I'm very sorry for how I acted. Spencer was definitely leading with ego this episode. And side note, shout out to this head coach, because his head coach is exactly what Spencer needs. He tells him a bunch of things that he don't want to hear, but Spencer needs to hear, and it's going to make him a great player for it. I love Spencer being placed back into a place of having to work for all the acclaim that he wants, and it not necessarily just being given to him. I think that is dope. And I love that he's having to stretch and learn new ways to become better versus doing the same old things and thinking that he's going to get the same results. But no, boo-boo, you in a whole new environment. But at the end of the episode, Spencer goes to Coach Boone and says, I'm going to refocus. I'm going to be watching game footage. I want to learn everything about all of my teammates and all the plays and all that's going on. If you would sit with me, I would love it. If you could help me with that. Coach Boone says, I'm 100% down. He's like, all right, I'm gonna do it in an hour. Coach Boone's like, why an hour? Let's do it now. I'm hyped. I'm with you. Oh, I got other priorities. What? Spencer, what? The coach that staked his contract on bringing you to this school is available to jumpstart and get you to a better place after you showed your entire behind at various points in this episode. And you have to go prioritize getting Reese cups on snack time with Olivia? Huh? It don't make any kind of sense, Spencer. You're putting off the coach that has deeply invested in you, the only person who really believes in you in this program at this given point in time, so that you could go have Reese's with Olivia. That to me, y'all, it's giving setup for some more drama and trauma. I can't. Like, you can be in a relationship, but both of them have to realize that there are sacrifices that they have to make to get what they want. Olivia might have a lot more free time than Spencer do, but Spencer, you need to be focused. You need to be working to reposition yourself on that team if you ever want to see, not only, he didn't even make the third string, y'all, and he's going to have Reese's cups with Olivia because that is more of a priority. No, it's not a priority. Your only priority right now is yourself. If you cannot be in a relationship and prioritize yourself right now, then you don't need to be in a relationship. The same thing for Olivia. The same way that Olivia has to prioritize herself and her sobriety, you need to prioritize yourself in football and school. That's it. That's all. If anything that you're choosing to do it doesn't align with that, then you don't need to choose to do it. Y'all are still in a relationship if you don't meet up 2 times a day for snack time. Y'all are still in a relationship if you are only able to catch up Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at a certain time to debrief of what's going on. This is literally one season of y'all's lives, and watching it is so, I will say it's kind of true to life in that we make some of these impromptu rash decisions because we misprioritize some things thinking that we're going to wind up losing X, Y, and Z, and don't realize how we're kind of selling our dreams a little bit short, or selling what we could do to actually achieve our dreams really short because we have to prioritize this person or this thing in this moment that's outside of us. And then we fail to realize if that thing needed all of my time and attention when I needed to be doing something else or giving my time and attention elsewhere, then that thing wasn't actually for me in that moment, in that time. And that's how I feel about their relationship. I am very concerned as we exit episode 11 and watching Spencer prioritize going to get Reese cups with Olivia versus sitting with his coach that put his neck out on the line to make sure that Spencer was there and has been riding for him this entire time. I feel very nervous, and Spencer feeling like he has to make a extended effort to prioritize Olivia in his life when he's already extending himself way further than he possibly realizes as he's adjusting and trying to adapt to this new environment. To me, this is a recipe for disaster. character. And Olivia said last episode that she was going to be very understanding if they needed to take a step back, if they needed to not see each other on these snack times or try to fit X, Y, and Z in. So we gonna have to see that, y'all. I'm not saying that they have to actually break up, but they need to be able to go without seeing each other. Okay, that is my full breakdown. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but that is my thoughts on episode 11. Again, if you missed it, please go back and check out my live. I did an amazing rant, I feel, where I got a lot of this off my chest last night, and it was a little entertaining because people kind of liked it, I suppose. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications so that you don't miss out on any of my All-American content. We have a few All-American and All-American Homecoming videos dropping today, so I can't wait for y'all to check those things out, and I'll see you in the next one.